And on the same basis, maybe instead of talking about use cases, maybe we should be talking about customer journeys and human needs. Nevertheless, use cases probably the accepted vernacular, and I'll save that crusade for another day. But we are very focused here on what are the actual circumstances that people have a need for an ID verification service. And in our work in convalescing around the progress to Connect ID, we ran a series of design sprints where we convened and we hosted people from other banks, from government, from law firms, from consumer advocacy groups, from our corporate clients, from academics. And we ran a series of design sprints, and through that activity, we really established these 6 use cases as 6 of the really important ones in the here and now. The rental home application. This is the scenario where quite often somebody renting a home is required to hand over their passport and driver's license to the real estate action. The point I made earlier of how well is it and how well secure is that necessarily protected. It's a piece that I think a lot of people are uncomfortable with having to hand that over, but at the moment they don't really have an alternative until we can bring forward a service that replaces that. Proof of age and for things like purchasing alcohol. In Australia, our drinking age is 18, and quite often you are having to hand over your driver's license to demonstrate that you are over 18. And that was the root of the point I made about the licence club leakage recently. But they don't actually need your driver's license. They don't actually need your date of birth. All they actually need is verification from a trusted source, such as the bank, that your date of birth was at least 18 years ago, yes or no, 21 years ago in this country. Employee onboarding, and not just the actual act of onboarding, but also through the whole recruitment process and verifying the authenticity of references and referees. Another piece where you don't really need to be sharing core identity documentation, and ID verification service should prove an alternative. A lot of the online e-commerce and vacation rentals is one that we'll just call out here as an example. It's probably a really timely one because I noticed on the weekend that much of the feed was lighting up with, whilst it was Memorial Day holiday weekend in the US, lighting up with people telling their horror stories of the Airbnb that they booked didn't actually turn out to be legitimate. The sort of cases that we heard about years ago where people were taking photos of a house that was for sale on Zillow and creating a fake listing. Online personas and chat groups. How do you establish that the other people in the group are actually real, are actually of the profile that they've described, and they are actually entitled to be there? One really interesting piece of extra into this is in the case of monkeys that are playing in their groups on Roblox and the like. Is the customer in this case necessarily the child, or is it the parent? I think it's probably very good interest on behalf of both. And then disaster payments. We've had our share of wildfires and floods, and in those circumstances we quite often have government wanting to get very quickly money into the hands of the people who most need it, as well as for insurers. But in an environment where quite often the traditional identification that people are relying on has been lost or destroyed in the course of the fire, where can we provide alternatives for that? So these are the examples of how we're really focusing on things that are actually genuinely meaningful and where we can solve a real problem. And where, in our case, Connect ID, we very much sought to follow on the precedent that I think has been set by the world leader in Norway and Sweden with bank ID. And I think I want to deliver that context, and I think Lyndon will probably elaborate on this tomorrow, that by no means are we claiming that we're perfect or even that we're world leading. And the reality is that Connect ID is still a relatively new service and is still being rolled out and still to achieve its full point of ubiquity in our economy. But we are on that journey, and these are some of the core problems that we're committed to solve. As well as, I think, some of those we touched on earlier around the other online marketplaces and that growing problem of the deepfake circle. Lastly, where I want to bring some of this together is that we can't do this on our own. And I think this is a really important recognition to make, particularly in the space of banking where, as an industry, we don't always have a great history or a great reputation for having been able to collaborate. And part of that is for reasons of being very conscious of things like competition law. Part of it is, I guess, somewhat of a culture of the more secretive behaviour that you might see in the sector and in regulated sectors more generally. but it is something that we can't solve on our own. I can't put a proposition in front of an alcohol retailer and say, hey, NAB, as one of the 4 major banks in Australia, I can solve this for how you validate 25% of your customers. You've got to go and find another solution to how you're going to validate the other 75%. It only works if we come together as an industry. And I think that's been seen in some of the other examples worldwide. I'm going to pick up on Norway's Bank ID as an example on this further, but I also want to stress that collaboration needs to happen at another level. Besides just within the sector vertical, it also needs that same level of collaboration beyond the sector, and in particular between our sector and government. And if we look at Norway's Bank ID, which I do think is the global exemplar, if you look at the success factors in how they've got to their levels today, and today they have 99% of Norwegians using Bank ID, 99% of Norwegians aged between 20 and 60 use Bank ID, and they use it an average of 220 times a year, so they're using it for everything. And they've got the lowest fraud rates in the world. The fraud rate on e-commerce transactions using Bank ID is 0.0004%. It's essentially nothing. Now you might say, well, Scandinavian countries by their nature tend to be low crime societies, but as we know, e-commerce fraud is global, it is borderless now, so I don't think that holds up. So they have a fraud level that's essentially nothing, whereas the Visa verified stats across each region around the world are typically in the 3, 4, 5% range. So there's an enormous difference that they managed to achieve in Bank ID reducing fraud rates. But the real inflection point in Norway's case in their level of adoption was in 2012, where you could start using Bank ID to access government services. So it became not just using Bank ID when you're dealing with somebody peer-to-peer, or when you're renting a home, but also in this scenario when you're logging into wealth and taxation and other records. And so I think the lesson that we've heard from their experience is that we need to be able to bring together a service that is seamless for the customer across all walks of life, not only the ones that deal directly with us in our own sector, not only the ones that they deal with in other private sector enterprises, but indeed across the full spectrum of their activity, and that means the collaboration across industries and the government. This is another crucial factor. So that's why in what we've done in Australia, we've come together via Australia Payments Plus. We're also represented here. I see Andrew Blake in the audience also. And it was a really significant success factor that we were able to come together, and Australia Payments Plus really provided if you like, something that's a safe place for the banks to come together and collaborate. But it's also been really important that we've been able to paint this vision and share this vision with the government. So, if I can draw together a few of the themes that I've talked through here, firstly, I think the major trends that we're seeing as futurists, as innovators, all very much points to this notion that we have to look outside the traditional boundaries of our sector, the traditional boundaries of what we have done for our customers. We need to think bigger, and we need to look at where our customers will be, and what are the services that our customers will need in order to have safer experiences throughout all walks of life. We need to step forward and provide options to our customers. I made that point that I think more people are likely to use an ID service if they've got a choice of provider. Well, of course, they only get a choice of provider if enough providers step forward to entertain and to enable that choice. And so again, if I use that term societal obligation, we talked about that as an opportunity for us as a bank, but it's also an obligation for us that we need to step forward and be a provider. Otherwise, our customers are left to that shoe-on scenario that I don't think works. And then that we can't do it alone. That we need to share, we need to be open, we need to build a coalition with others who share the same vision, the same passion, but where we can bring safer and more convenient experiences for the members of our society. I want to conclude with one final note. And I have made the point here that describing a bit of what we've done in Australia, where we've observed the exemplars in other parts of the world. But I have been describing a scenario of what we do in our own specific market. And there are great initiatives happening in other markets. The work of the Pan-Canadian Trust Framework is another example. The ESB program in Belgium is another great example. But as we focus on driving the uptake and becoming more ubiquitous within our own economy. We also need to keep an eye on cross-border activity, because ultimately we are going to need to support customers in their experiences and their activities that do extend beyond national borders. And that might be in areas of migration, it might be in the area of tourists, it might be in the area of simply people that are engaging in cross-border e-commerce, ordering things online and wanting to verify the seller in another country is actually legitimate. So if I could leave with a final ask or a final call to action, we need to be ensuring that we are building our respective solutions in our own markets with an eye on that cross-border connectivity. Because ultimately, my NAT customers are also going to need to be able to safely interact with Wells Fargo, Bank of America customers, and NatWest customers, and Sumitomo Mitsui customers. And when there are some great solutions implemented, for instance, with somebody like a Ticketmaster, to ensure that you are not a bot, and then your US bank perhaps verifies that you are not a bot, that you're not a bot acting on behalf of the scalper, and you are actually a legitimate person entitled to your place in the queue for Taylor Swift tickets. We're going to have National Australia Bank customers who also want to buy Taylor Swift tickets. So, if I can leave on that note, I think there's an important piece there that we can all be taking forward within our own markets, within our own sectors, that we need to be collaborating, but we need to not only limit that collaboration within our own markets, and that we need to do so with an eye towards international coordination and connectivity. Thank you.
Keynote this morning's general session. I'd like to say another big thank you to Brad Carr from National Australia Bank for this. Having the opportunity to bring people from around the world that understand what these challenges look like outside of our day-to-day experience is so important. I get a lot out of this, right? I come, I find out what's happening, I go back. I hope that everybody has that experience this week. So I'm really grateful to Brad for coming across and sharing, his learning and his perspective. Thank you for coming this morning. I hope you have a great day. Lots of material, lots of sessions, lots of stuff to look at the expo, and I will look forward to seeing you again tomorrow morning at 8:30. Enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.